Welcome to the April edition of my Books and Crochet, where I am creating a mitered granny square for each book that I read this year. I've got a whole bunch of granny squares here. I read a whole bunch in January, a little bit in February, and a little bit less in March. And now I'm going to show you what I read in April. My goal for this project is to create all of these granny squares for each book that I read, and choosing colors that either reflect the book in some way, or just the cover art, or just maybe what I'm feeling as I'm listening or reading the book. These are all just made with acrylic 4-weight yarn and a 5mm crochet hook. I try to choose 3 colors. Sometimes I only choose 2 depending on the book, but I try to choose 3 colors that do reflect the book in some way. It's a very fun, quick project, so as you read your books or listen to your books, you can crochet a mitered granny square, or any kind of granny square for that matter. I am doing the mitered granny squares, and at the end of this year I'm going to sew them all up, probably join as you go, but we'll see when I get there. And I'll have a really fun sort of a memory blanket of this year's reading that I did. So let's take a look and see what books I read in April. The first book I read was Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner. I read the actual book for this one. Yes, you heard that right. Not an audiobook and not on my Kindle. This one I had the physical copy of the book. Crying in Hmart is a memoir about Michelle's life growing up in the United States with a South Korean mother and an American father. She wrote this memoir in remembrance of her mother, who passed away from cancer. She details how she was a difficult child, especially during her teenage years, and now regrets how she acted towards her mother. How she tried to hide her Korean background, how she yearned to fit in with American classmates, and now how she honors and is proud of her heritage. This is an emotional roller coaster that's very well written. Michelle details her life as she's growing up and how difficult it was for her to fit in, and feeling like she really didn't fit in anywhere. For this granny square, I chose the colors red and sort of a tan beige. I felt like these colors reflected the cover art, and since I read this book as a physical book and not an audiobook or a Kindle book, I really wanted to capture that cover art. I highly recommend this book. Goodreads has an overall rating of 4.27, and I'm right there. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. The second book I read in April was called One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. I listened to this in audiobook format, and that may have been a mistake. This is the 3rd installment of the series, and I could have done without this one, honestly. Maybe if I had picked this up as an actual book or read it on my Kindle, I would have gotten more invested in it, but the female voice actors were pretty bad in this one. I just couldn't get invested. Without giving anything away, because it is sort of a high school thriller mystery, this book follows characters that we see in the first and second books, and it's just a bunch of the same. Someone is murdered, teens try to find the killer and get into some trouble themselves, of course. I don't know, I enjoyed the first book much more than this one. The second one was just alright, and this one I just couldn't get into the storyline. Goodreads has this one an overall rating of 3.97, and I'm giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. I just couldn't get into it. The colors that I chose for my granny square are the Mary Maxim Blue Glimmer, followed by red, followed by a darker blue, and I do really like how this square came out in the end, so I'm pleased with that. The third and final book that I read in April is called Caleb's Crossing by Geraldine Brooks. I read this one on my Kindle, and it was a surprising read. This book tells the real story of Caleb, a Native American Indian in the 1600s who attends and graduates from Harvard. I believe he is the first known Native American to have done so. The story is told from the point of view of Bethia, who befriends Caleb when they are young. It's a very interesting historical fiction about this time period, and while it took me a chapter or two to really get my attention, once I got into the language of that time and how the story was written, I was pleasantly engaged. There are ups and downs in this story, as to be expected for a story about this time period, but I enjoyed the characters and felt like I was right there in the 1600s. This is the first book I've read by this author, and I just might pick up another book or two of hers. Goodreads gives this one a rating of 3.85, and I'm pretty much on track with that. I'm actually going to give this one 4 out of 5 stars. The colors that I chose for this square are sort of a dark blue and then a very bright kind of neon green, followed by purple, followed by that same blue that I used at the beginning, and I love, love, love how this square turned out in the end. My April book squares, all done. I really love how they came out, and one of the best things about this project is they work up so fast. It's a nice, quick little project that you can then turn into a big blanket or a bag or whatever you want to do with these little squares, especially if you don't feel like crocheting a big blanket or any other sort of large project. I just absolutely love making these little squares. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Until next time, happy crocheting and happy reading. Bye.